Hi, I'm Erik Linask. We're here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida at ITEXPO and IoT Evolution Expo 2017. Joining me now, Karl Weaver. Karl, thanks for joining me. Great to see you.
Thank you very much for inviting me here. Fort Lauderdale is a fantastic place. It's very happy to be at the IT Expo and also the IoT Evolution Expo.
So you started telling me a little bit about the embedded SIM world and why it's so critical right now. Can you get a little bit into that?
Well, first of all, most of the embedded SIMs will not come from the United States, mostly in Asia, the manufacture of these embedded SIMs. But they're relevant in the United States because most of the high-end connected cars already have an embedded SIM to provide 4G LTE connectivity, WAN connectivity to the car, and eventually you just add a Wi-Fi modem into the cars to get Wi-Fi in the car, but it's all because of the 4G LTE connectivity. That's on the connected car side. But there are actually three different segments. There's the industrial side, there's the connected car side, which is not industrial, and then there's the wearables side for consumer electronic devices. I'm wearing a Samsung Gear S2 smartwatch right now, and this is the first device in the world compliant with the GSMA's remote SIM provisioning program. It has hermetically sealed an embedded SIM into this device, so this is essentially a standalone smartphone on my wrist. That's what it is. It's important because wearables in America do one thing, mostly fitness and health, but in the rest of the world, especially Europe and Asia, actually wearables are for payment because most of these watches have NFC, near field communications, in order to do payment. And in much of Asia and Europe, they're really, they don't all use cars. There's a lot of public transportation usage, and for them the utility is NFC for payment on the wrist, in the subway, on a bus, on a train, and it's just so much more convenient, even in an airplane or in an airport. So it's about the embedded SIM, but the embedded SIM itself is simply a hermetically sealed, embedded 8-pin SIM module, not a card anymore. It's an embedded module, so small, it's like almost like a grain of rice. It's that small, but it's embedded into all these devices. First will be these wearable smartwatches, and then eventually also tablet PCs. Eventually, by the end of the year, we think smartphones. So that's the physical, tamper-resistant and very secure form factor for the embedded SIM. But by itself, without the technology embedded into it, it's nothing but storage. Therein lies that the GSMA has created this remote SIM provisioning program for all of these industrial and consumer electronic devices, and therein lies the program which needs to scale around the world. Especially in America, we think T-Mobile and AT&T will be the first adopters of the GSMA's remote SIM provisioning program. We think that's going to happen very soon, perhaps this month, that the Digits program from T-Mobile will be announced, and it will essentially be the components and the use cases for this GSMA remote SIM provisioning program. This is all very, very relevant because a smartwatch is the lowest price point, entry point for an IoT device and also a payment device. It's between $100 and $300 for a smartwatch. That's why smartwatches are very relevant. They've been given a bad rap around the world because, well, they are too expensive and they're clunky and they're ugly looking. Some of them are ugly looking and they're not unisex enough for many women to buy it. But in general, that form factor will improve, will get smaller, will get lighter, and the power will improve because of companies like Qualcomm making better wearable chips. So there's a whole wearable sector that has been given a little bit of a bad rap. I'm here to say that, number one, payment is very important for a smartwatch. Number two, the remote SIM provisioning program from the GSMA will scale, we think, in 2017. And number three, we think the embedded SIM, because it's going to be very relevant because in addition to being hermetically sealed, more and more consumers around the world want water-resistant or waterproof devices. And you can essentially you can go swimming with the Samsung Gear S2 and 3. You can actually go in a few meters of water and it'll be fine.
So, alongside everything that you just mentioned, there's the human factor that's involved, though, when it comes to especially adoption of smartwatches and some of the functionality and capabilities, and that's trust and which plays into security. How do you overcome that?
Well, the way Samsung, with their Knox program, overcomes that is And actually, Apple too. Actually, both companies care very much about the security side. And I'm ex-Gemalto, so I spent 5 years promoting payment and security in China for Gemalto a number of years ago. The way that Samsung handles it is they have this Knox program, which is essentially using what we call the TEE, the Trusted Execution Environment, which is embedded into the Samsung Gear S3 device right now. But in addition to that, the embedded SIM is, generally speaking, the SIM module, the SIM card and the SIM module are tamper resistant. I like to say that nothing in the world is 100% tamper resistant. But in general, this whole entire ecosystem of mobile network operators relies on the security of the SIM card. The embedded SIM also has the same level of cryptographic keys and encryption technology in the SIM card that make it pretty much tamper resistant because it's hardware with software embedded into the hardware. So the smart people in these companies know that a smartwatch can also be hacked, so they've added the extra layer of security, software and hardware, into the smartwatches because they are a payment device and payment needs protection.
There was an awful lot of hype around wearables in general, certainly around smartwatches that didn't get there yet.
Yes, I agree 100%. And the cool thing is when I was traveling and I do travel into China, and I would go and visit some of these smartwatch vendors, I would specifically say, that looks ugly. You're not going to be able to sell that to half the population of your user base, which are women. You have to design the product understanding fashion and luxury. With these smartwatches, you need to do that. And they're slowly but surely understanding the pitch, which is, look, you can make a smartwatch, but if nobody's going to buy it, that smartwatch becomes useless, no matter how much technology it has into it. So there's an aesthetic aspect that needs to be designed into the watch. The other problem with the smartwatches is the power. You can't really get more than 2 days of power on a smartwatch. And the third thing that I've noticed with some of the smartwatches is they're much too big on your wrist. That's why, again, no woman will really feel comfortable with a heavy watch that encompasses the entire wrist. It has to be miniaturized. It has to use the embedded SIM. That's the only way to miniaturize because you have so little architecture space when you're designing all of this technology into a smartwatch. You're dealing with a very small, limited amount of space. But pretty much you're going to expect to spend you're not going to get more than 48 hours of power on a smartwatch before you have to charge it. And lots of people say, no, I don't want to charge my smartwatch. I'm charging my smartphone. I'm charging my tablet. I don't want to charge my smartwatch. But unfortunately, that is the current situation.
How do you feel about it? You wear one. Do you mind charging it?
I have no choice. I'm not a design engineer, but I do believe that around the world, the savvy corporations, Samsung, LG, Apple, and quite honestly, a lot of good Chinese smartwatch vendors are now designing and improving. And it really is about the chip, power management of the chip. And then in that case, Qualcomm has a wearables chip now, 2100 wearable chip, and they are improving the battery life. And it's not Moore's law, but it's almost like Moore's law in that you will have more and more power management and saving, and more hours to use the watch. It's just an evolutionary process. I don't know if you recall 10, 15 years ago, you didn't get more than a few hours on a phone. And by the way, they weren't even smartphones. They were, remember, feature phones. Sure. So it's all an evolutionary process. The great thing is we have technology companies all around the world trying to solve this problem, from the semiconductor chip to the SIM card to the other components to basically provide better power management.
Excellent. Great stuff, Karl. Thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Well, thank you very much. I very much appreciate that. And the football season is essentially over, but go Mariners. Can I say that?
You know they don't play football.
No. Go Seattle Mariners. Football's over. Go Seattle Mariners. That's my private pitch. Thank you very much. I'm always a gas, I know.